Jeremy, could you do the Lich laugh in the background? That was the Lich laughing. Here on Lich's Lair, the kind of...
There we go. That'll be a Lich.
Yes. Let me tell you all a little bit about what it is, what we do in here. On Lich's Lair, one of you brave adventurers, tonight it's VBunnie. We have VBunnie with us now. Hello, VBunnie.
Hello.
One of you brave adventurers is going to hop in, and obviously VBunnie here, and attempt to present an artifact of incredible value to the Lich, and we'll see whether or not the Lich deems it worthy to add to his collection of strange and marvelous wonderments and potions and magical artifacts. This case...
And rogue archetypes.
Yeah, in this case, what type of content do you have to share with us tonight? What do you got?
A nice rogue archetype.
And I'm looking at it here. Oh, I see, Jeremy, you already have it up on the stream.
Of course, Peter. What do you think? I'm some kind of pleb?
It's called the Street Fighter, which I'm excited to see what you came up with. I'm also
very interesting.
I enjoy the bard, but I also very much enjoy the rogue. I like characters that are good at skill checks, I guess. So, VBunnie, my first question for you is, Jeremy,
before we jump into that, do we want to super quickly talk about how we're going to look at this? Because this is the Lich's Lair. This is not our just friendly chatter. We're going to be critically analyzing VBunnie's submission here. And how are we going to do that?
We're going to be doing it with the Fantasy Labs rubric. It is a rubric that we've put together that has 5 categories here. We were talking about it a bit earlier, but this is where we're going to really be using it. You earn a point if you pass a particular category, or you don't earn a point if it does not pass in that particular category. And to be considered of a high enough quality for production, meaning something that we think, like, this is something that could be just published in a Wizards of Coast book, is what we mean by that. And that's kind of about where I think you would have to be to get a 5 out of 5, as something that me and Jeremy would think, like, yeah, you could just run this in the book today. So it's very hard to actually pull off a 5 out of 5 on a draft and kind of a take like this. Additional rules: you can get an extra point if you do something that's so exceptional in a given category that it justifies maybe a little bit of imbalance somewhere else. And Jeremy, do you want to take us through some of the stuff we're going to be looking at here?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at 5 categories, like Pete said. First is space. Is there room for this in 5e? And does it fill a niche, either mechanically or in its flavor, that the system lacks and that couldn't reasonably be accomplished by just reflavoring another class a little bit? We're also going to be looking at balance. Is it technically balanced, right? Is this something that is pretty reasonable compared to other things in the game, comparable objects or parts of the game as a whole, or just to other... like in this case, rogue subclasses, right? How does it fit into the other rogues? Playability. Would adding this to the game disrupt the flow of play? And are there features that could be frustrating or problematic to use as a dungeon master or player? Is the design elegant? Does it follow the basic conventions of 5e? And if not, is it justified where it deviates? And are the effects creative and easy to use? And flavor, does it make you want to play the subclass, right? Is this something that inspires you to be like, oh man, I want to be this? So that's what we're looking at.
And we're going to be looking at on VBunnie, again, the name of your roguish archetype here.
The BAM.
The Street Fighter.
All right. So the Street Fighter. Let's like just start hopping right into this thing. Where did I put it? It's around here somewhere. All right, there we go.
Would you like to read, or would you like us to read your thing?
You guys can read it. I want to make sure that you can read it and it's legible. So go.
Fair enough.
That's actually a really, really good point that maybe we should do in the future.
Absolutely.
Anyway, go ahead, Pete. Take it.
Yeah, I'll start here. So, the Street Fighter. You were trained on the streets. While the rich and privileged were trained in things like how to use a sword, you were forced to rely on your wit, speed, fists, and underhanded fighting tactics. You spend many years fighting in places like bars, alleys, and even fighting pits, trying to earn a living. While some warriors are elegant, you are a brute clad in whatever you could scrounge together. Pit fighters and bar brawlers typically belong to this archetype. A street fighter excels in using their environment to their advantage in single combat, combat and can fight with just about anything while taking a hit or two. All right, cool.
That's some really good flavor.
Agreed. And before we start getting too nitpicky, I think we're just going to go through and read all of it. So would you like to take Ruffian, Jeremy?
Yeah, so when you choose this archetype at 3rd level, you learn how to fight in a variety of unconventional ways. You gain proficiency in medium armor and improvised weapons. Interesting. You can use dexterity instead of strength for the attack rolls and damage rolls of your improvised strikes and improvised weapons. Very interesting. You can roll a d4 in place of the normal damage of your unarmed strike or improvised weapon.
All right.
And that is Ruffian.
Very well. And also they get an additional feature here at 3rd level. Starting at 3rd level, your confidence propels you into battle. You can use a bonus action to try to grapple or shove a creature within 5 feet of you to the ground. You also gain additional ways to use your sneak attack. You may make a sneak attack with any weapon with the ranged property or any melee weapon that does not have the heavy property, as well as your unarmed strike and improvised weapons. Additionally, you don't need to have advantage on the attack roll to use your sneak attack against a target you are grappling. The other requirements of sneak attack still apply to you.
Interesting. Okay.
We'll take Bob and Weave, Jeremy.
Yeah. Bob and Weave. At 9th level, your fighting skills have given you the ability to counter melee opponents and dodge their blows. When a creature within 5 feet of you makes a melee attack against you, you can use a reaction to gain the benefits of the dodge action. Okay. Additionally, when you use this feature, you can attempt to grapple or shove the creature as part of the same reaction if the creature misses you with their attack against you. Okay.
All right. Ground game. Starting at 13th level, I like that name. Starting at 13th level, you are a master of street fighting. If you move at least 10 feet in a straight line towards the targets and take the attack action, you can knock the target prone or grapple the target as a part of the same attack if it hits. Additionally, if a target attempts to grapple you and fails, you can use your action to successfully escape a grapple, or you use an action to successfully escape a grapple. My mistake there. You can use your reaction to attempt to grapple against the same creature.
Interesting. And then the last feature is Ground and Pound. Beginning at 17th level, your mastery of hand-to-hand combat has let you excel in attacking at the right moment. You gain expertise in the athletics and acrobatics skills. If you already have expertise in these skills, you may gain expertise in another skill you're proficient with. Additionally, you gain advantage on athletics and acrobatics checks made to attempt to grapple a creature or free yourself from a grapple. All right.
So
let's start looking just as an overall broad looking at our categories, right?
Yeah. And I want to start with I'll start with flavor, I think, on this one, Jeremy.
We'll start with flavor. Yeah, sure.
Actually, I think we could actually start right at the beginning with space. I think that might be better here. And
I think going space then to flavor is usually the
agreed.
I good strat.
I think that is the strat. And do I think there's space for and VBunnie, before we even answer that, can you explain to me how do you see this in 2 words? What is the mechanical niche that is the Street Fighter to you?
Grapple rogue in 2 words, but if you're understanding,
you can have a couple more words.
Yeah, you can have a couple more words.
No, this is actually inspired from actual street fights and techniques that they use in actual street fighting, and I felt like that should have been better incorporated into D&D, and I feel like that's the space for this. That's what this is.
And I'm actually pretty into that. When I hear rogue, this is a thing that I think of as part of that. Because there's definitely room for that kind of rough and tumble in fighter, and I feel like you can make that character. But I can actually see a thuggish sort of, because it has that criminal element, those criminal elements built into the class, and that sort of thuggish side alley character, and having these sort of abilities. I think there is a space for a more, and I don't know if there might be some things in execution that are changing my thoughts here, but I think there is space for a rogue that's centered around being this sort of more bruisery sort of rogue than the traditional, very finessey rogue.
Well, I think the real key concepts here, and there are a couple of phrases from the write-up that I'd like to look at in particular. Which, of course, if I have underhanded fighting tactics, wits, and speed, these are words that, to me, really, I think, would define, right, this kind of character, right, this kind of archetype. And I think there's definitely room for that. For some reason, there are no cheap shot rogue subclasses. And like that kind of makes sense to me, right? There should be a cheap shot, like I take advantage of opportunities, right? I'm opportunistic.
It is a sneak attack in its own right.
Exactly, right? It's like, I don't just make a sneak attack. I am
I say look over there, and then I punch you in the face.
Yeah, right. Or I think that would be a reasonable one, right? Or I think with the improvised weapons that VBunnie included here, it's kind of like, oh, you're in a bar fight. Oh, that guy's bigger than me. I smash a bottle and stab him, right?
Yeah.
So from that regard, I think there's absolutely space in 5e for it. Now, in terms of does it fill a niche in flavor that the system lacks that couldn't be accomplished by another class? A couple of people in chat, I noticed Blood was half, or I think it was Blood, had mentioned the monk. And I disagree, just on the principle that the monk might be able to handle the unarmed fighting really well. You know, there are certain abilities that are core to the monk class, like stillness of mind, right? Or diamond soul and purity of body that just are not at
the monk
all
feels
flavor.
Too disciplined. Yeah, far too disciplined to me for this. I agree 100%.
Yeah. So I think the rogue is probably the place to put it. I think that's, you could maybe put it on fighter, but I think the rogue is a fine place to put it, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to do it on a rogue.
The rogue has the most like criminal association that feels like it works well with some of these more underhanded things. And the word sneak attack plays really nicely with a lot of that as well. So the flavor is aligned. And let's talk a little bit more as we're talking now about flavor. So one thing, and this will be my first kind of note here, as we're going through, and I was reading the first beginning, I like a lot of what you're saying there, starting with like, you like fighting in places like bars, alleys, and fighting pits, and some are elegant, but you are a brute clad in what you can scrounge together. Pit fighters and bar brawlers, that stuff works well for me. Additionally, excel in using their environment and things like that works, but you were trained on the streets, and some of that beginning stuff feels a little bit too backgroundy for a beginning flavor write-up, as my first kind of point to put up here. I like the flavor of a battler rogue, but some of it is a little bit too, like, telling you a little bit about your character.
Maybe. I don't think it's necessarily wrong to have those in here, but I think maybe if you put it in more of a phrasing of like, perhaps you were.
Yeah.
And then maybe if you gave a second example, or maybe, Yeah,
I could definitely get behind a phrasing like that.
Yeah, I think that would solve a lot of the problems that I think Pete's bringing up there. Because I know the Thief Rogue has some similar things, right? It says, rogues prefer to think of themselves as a professional treasure seeker, explorer, delver, or investigator, maybe thief rogues, right? It gives you a couple of different concepts, and I think that could... Well, and it also says burglars, bandits, cutthroats, and other criminals typically follow this archetype, right? So it gives you a couple of different examples.
And the pit fighters and bar brawlers, that phrase like worked for me because it was vaguer and kind of more general. So I think that could happen with some of the earlier stuff as well.
Right. But otherwise, pretty good.
Yeah,
and the idea of this is that, like, whenever you said you were trained on the streets, it's trying to show that you're not like this, elegant monk. You're not a monk. You're not a monastery trained fighter. You kind of grew up just having to fight, and whatever way you want to do that, that's fine. But that's the difference.
You say that, but I kind of like the idea, right? Like, what if I wanted to play a monk character, right? Where like I was born in a monastery, right? I was or I wasn't born, like I was an orphan brought to a monastery. I was raised in this monastery, but the monks never really treated me well because I was just a crappy orphan, right? And I just kind of made, started fights and made problems. And I wanted to make that character be the Street Fighter class. There are a couple of assumptions built in here that sort of are a little bit, well, they assume certain things.
Yeah.
That's all. I think it'd be cool if we had the common examples like you have there, and maybe that, or perhaps blah, 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 just to give a little more openness. But overall, I mean, it's solid. Flavor-wise, I think you get the mark.
Agreed.
The flavor and space, you got 2 already, VBunnie, doing good. Let's keep knocking here. Ruffian.
Yeah. So Ruffian. When you choose the archetype at 3rd level, so you're going to gain proficiency in medium armor and improvised weapons. I think that's cool. You can use your dexterity instead of strength for the attack and damage rolls of your unarmed strikes and improvised weapons, and you can roll a d4 for the damage on them. So I think this feature
question
is,
sorry,
there's something I'm like on the fence on, and that is the dexterity for improvised weapons. The dexterity for improvised weapons doesn't quite necessarily make sense to me as a first note, because like there's some, when you, like, for example, you described you break a glass bottle and like stab someone with it. Yeah, I can definitely see that kind of improvised weapon. But also when I picture an improvised weapon, what I picture literally is someone like, I picture what people were talking about, the
hit him with the chair,
hit him with the chair, and like the tavern brawler vibe. And that doesn't feel like you would be better at that by having like being fast. That does seem like a raw strength thing to me.
Yeah, so there's an interesting note. VBunnie, what did you think of when you put improvised weapons in there?
Well, I thought that like the like you said, with the chair, the bottle, all of this, and while you might be able to raw strength it, which is an option, which is what I'm kind of opening up the space for, is a strength-based rogue as an option, like a viable option. But you could also go with the more dexterity-based too. So maybe with that chair, you're not hitting them for raw strength. Maybe you're distracting them and then smashing them on the side whenever they're distracted or something. Maybe you, like, instead of throwing slamming the chair into them, maybe you poke them with the chair. Something like that. Like,
I have a couple of questions related to this. The first one is, did you look at, I believe it's the Tavern Brawler feat, which has some specific rating?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, it did.
It's a good place to start. The next thing I have is, did you look at the improvised weapons section in the player's handbook under the equipment chapter?
Yes, I did.
That's very interesting, because you say you gain proficiency in improvised weapons, but the game is very vague about what is an improvised weapon, right? It says things like, at a DM's option, a character proficient with a weapon can use a similar object as if it were that weapon and use their proficiency bonus. So is this just you are proficient with everything that you would use? Because the thing on improvised weapons is like, it's the way 5e uses them is you take an improvised weapon, what is this similar to on the weapon table? All right, that's what it is, right? If you grabbed a, I don't know, like let's say one of those flag poles, right? With like it's got the little pointed tip on the top and it's got a little banner flowing from it. That's a spear. Does what a spear does, even though it's got the flag sticking from it, right? That's how 5e handles improvised weapons. So it's just a little, I don't know. It's just a little funky, because the way this reads, right, is like, all right, if I just take a piece of steel and shape it roughly into a halberd, I'm proficient with this effectively halberd.
But the halberd would only do a d4.
Well, no, and according to the book, right, it does the damage of the weapon.
But according to this, it says it does a d4.
Well, it says you can roll a d4, but by that interpretation, you are not obligated to roll a d4.
Oh, that's true. I guess that's fair.
Yeah. I'm not saying I necessarily have a big issue with it. I just think improvised weapons are such a mushy DM discretion part of the game that I think there definitely needs to be a little bit more rigorous
A codifying
design
of what
and
they mean.
beautifully said. A little bit more rules in what it exactly, kind of like how in the monk subclass, right? The monk weapons has a pretty substantial description. And I think even if you end up rephrasing some of the text that is in like improvised weapons and take that section a little bit and give it more bulk to what it means in the context of the class, that could potentially really help. But I think I get that conceptually, I'm very in. Flavor-wise, I'm very in.
Duben was saying, why do you get proficiency in medium armor? I don't know about you, Jeremy. That actually worked for me.
It did well for me. I see medium armor as that. I mean, to be frank, and a lot of the from a balance perspective, a power play perspective, it's that bad armor that you only wear if you can't afford good light armor, or you can't afford good heavy armor, or you only have proficiency in medium armor. Or in this case, right, if you put points into your strength and you don't have a maxed out dexterity, you'd also want medium armor.
Yeah.
So I like it. I have no problems with that personally. I think that works. It also feels the most cobbled together of armors.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, I could picture someone wearing, like, they couldn't afford plate, but they got themselves half of a plate, and they just wear the breastplate.
I stole this apron from the blacksmith, this big heavy leather apron, and this is part of my armor now.
This is my hide.
This is my hide armor.
So
that's the idea.
Yeah, that actually sold up me on it.
I think this would actually be a really cool, if there were room in this feature, if you could make something about improvising armor. Like if this whole section was just about improvising weapons and armor, that could be really neat. Because I think it'd be really cool to be able to have a subclass that could improvise their own medium armor. That just sounds to me.
No,
that just feels more like a rules thing.
You're right. It might be too complicated. Just a thought.
I have a question. Now, when you said you used dexterity instead of strength for your unarmed strikes, was that because you wanted to make sure that they could be used with sneak attack?
Well, you don't have to use dexterity for strength, but yes, you not only can it because you can use it for sneak attack, but also because rogues are typically built dexterity based.
Yeah, well,
I didn't want to force you into strength.
What is the exact phrasing on sneak attack for what it allows you to?
It needs to have the finesse property
or range properties.
Okay, so as it stands, technically speaking, so is it when you make a sneak attack with a weapon with a range property or melee weapon that does not have? Okay, so that's where that's addressed.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's why I also kind of put that in there. So if you wanted to do the halberd thing, you couldn't actually do that because it would have the heavy property.
Well, not with sneak attack, but yeah.
Right, you couldn't do this with the sneak attack, but if you wanted to grab something and cobble together a halberd, yeah, you can use that.
Mm-hmm.
But you won't get your sneak attack. That's why I did this. So you could have basically any weapon, like you said, you basically have any weapon, but you'd have to have a flavor, a reason, you'd have to be creative in coming up with what this weapon is. You'd have to also make sure that it doesn't have the heavy property if you want to be able to benefit from your sneak attack, and it also feeds into the flavor of the character. So that's why I kind of left it open like that.
Okay. No, I totally get what you're going for. I just think maybe you could use a little bit more, because again, that section is very GM discretion, and if it's going to be a big issue in any class design is when a core facet of the class is up to the GM's discretion, that is a recipe for that being a problem at someone's table in the future.
Yeah.
So I just think, like Pete said, it just needs a little bit more codification. I think having like the D4 in there, that actually comes right out of the improvised weapon table. Obviously, you wanted to add it to the unarmed strikes as well. But that's just something to consider. Let's move on to the other third level feature, because this is, I think, probably the more, what do you call it? Underhanded tactics.
So, starting at third level, your confidence propels you into battle. You can use a bonus action to try and grapple or shove a creature within 5 feet of you to the ground. For me, for starters, this actually doesn't. I want to talk about flavor first, because this doesn't fully reflect the idea of underhanded tactics to me. Just like it just feels like kind of like rough and rowdy, but not necessarily underhanded. Like I would expect someone who is battling me to try and shove me to the ground. So the underhanded tactics was like a title of an ability that when I read, I was very excited for hitting that thing that was really making this work in a lot of ways for me. And I don't know if it satisfies that flavor for me.
I think in terms of the ability name, you're right. But for the class, I think it's fine.
I think that the class having this ability is cool, but it doesn't hit a thing that was, I guess, core to what was like written in the flavor description originally.
I'm not sure I get what you're saying. I'm a little confused.
Or maybe I'm actually, you know what?
Is your problem with just the name underhanded tactics? Because that's what it sounds like you're saying.
Maybe that's what it is. I thought the goal of this feature was to reflect underhanded tactics. And I don't think it does that as it stands. So maybe just a name change. Like I don't actually have an. Well, we'll talk about the balance of it in a second.
Grappling and shoving would work for that.
You think those feel
not for underhanded tactics? I'm sorry, for street fighting.
Yeah, you're right about that.
And I think that's where the issue's coming in.
Yeah. Maybe it's just a confusion about what I was envisioning out of like what a street fighter means to me. So I get where you're coming.
Let's talk about this additional ways to use your sneak attack.
Yes.
This is the one that I think is by far the most the big one to talk about, right? I know the biggest obvious side by side is just going to be the swashbuckler, because they also get additional ways to use their sneak attack. And let's see. Any weapon with a ranged property, I think that's already the case.
Yes, it is.
And any melee weapon that does not have the heavy property. All right. Yep. Okay. So both of those are already the. Well, no, because that's every weapon with the heavy property. So you can use this with strength now, as well as your unarmed strikes and improvised weapons. So if you improvise, I mean, God forbid you improvise a halberd, but you could do it. Oh, but it doesn't have the heavy property. I see. Gotcha. Okay. Additionally, you don't need advantage on the attack roll if you're grappling them. What do you think about this, Pete? So looking at our rubric, right, talking about balance, playability, and design, I don't think this has any problems playability-wise, that feature.
Yeah, I think that's fine on playability.
Besides the potential playability issues, right, of not better defining improvised weapons. But yeah, from a balance perspective, because I think that's what this is really about, right? Is this balanced? Do you think this is a reasonable balance option?
I think a bonus action to grapple every round. On one hand, the rogue's a class that already taxes its bonus action to the extent. I mean, that's one of the things about a rogue that you're doing. If you're playing a rogue, you're taking a bonus action every turn. A bonus action to grapple is pretty powerful with what grappling does. And considering that you're playing a rogue, you're inevitably going to be having expertise in this. So it's essentially a bonus action every turn to very reliably, very reliably immobilize any creature the same size as you, which I think is a little too powerful.
I actually have a really interesting note to play with this because VBunnie, it's funny you bring this boy in here. Some time ago, I played an Arcane Trickster Rogue that I designed and built to be a grappler. Yes, to be basically a street fighter in the same kind of context. And I can tell you, Pete, at least in my experience, it is really not that powerful. The bonus action grapple is really not that strong because so many creatures you can't really grapple. Like so many monsters, you just can't. Secondly, I mean, you can't use any of your other awesome rogue bonus actions if you're doing this. The shove prone, that one might be too strong. But
yeah, you don't think the effect of the grapple is too much?
I don't think so. I don't think the effect of the grapple is. I think shove prone might be too strong. I would actually like to see shove prone taken off of this and added somewhere later in, and we can talk about that point when we get there. But yeah, I don't think the grapple is actually a problem here, especially on the rogue, because as a fighter, by 5th level when you get extra attack, you can do that anyway. You make one attack and you grapple, just like the rogue makes one attack and grapples. So yeah, I don't think that's really a huge deal. In terms of the sneak attack aspects, personally, I can't think of where this is a problem. I guess nets. If you add the special property, right? That does not have the heavy or special property.
Okay,
because
I'll
I
do
don't want to sneak attack nets is like a little whack.
That's a little wacky.
But yeah, I mean,
that just don't make sense. I don't know.
Can't see too many issues with this personally, right? What is it like?
My instinct is that it's strong. If you're saying you've seen it in play and you're saying that it doesn't amount to much, I don't know, just like looking at the numbers,
it feels so much stronger than it is.
It's campaign dependent, definitely too. Like you were saying, like all the creatures that you encounter, it's very much like maybe this is really good in your campaign, or maybe you're only fighting dragons and you don't get to use it. Like there's definitely there's definitely a kind of some issues there.
It's contentious at the very least, and more than that, how does this really stack up against other rogues, what they get at third level, right?
So yeah, comparing it to, I mean, you're combining it with
the dodge, right, when they attack.
Oh, they get disengaged for free whenever they attack.
Disengaged, yeah, they get disengaged for free.
So they get out of unarmed strikes. They have an easier way to apply sneak attack, which this is comparable, I suppose.
Yeah, I would say that's fairly comparable between them. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there is an issue with this. I don't think it's a balance issue. I think it's a playability issue, because when you are up against monsters, you can't grapple. This third level feature really doesn't do a lot. And
that's the idea.
It's going to be it could be very frustrating.
That's the idea. If you're against something that you can't grapple, you still are a rogue. You're still able to do rogue stuff. Also comparable to things like shoving and stuff, there's like the fighter has the tripping attack. You have spells like Tasha's Hideous Laughter.
But trip attack you get so few times. Spells require a big save. This, like Pete said, you can have expertise in your thing, and monsters don't have proficiency.
Not you can. With this, you will have expertise.
Yeah, you're gonna crush them every single time on the shove action, dude.
Yeah, this also doesn't work on everything. So
I think you're right. I think the shove action is also limited to smaller creatures. I guess my personal takeaway here, and then I'll let it be. I think this is way too feast or famine against humanoids.
So maybe it is actually
awesome.
Maybe it is actually a playability issue, which is what we were.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a balanced one though.
We're ruling out.
I think it just might be too feast or famine. Oh, and I see Cold Spark was saying, put the range property in there to avoid taking sneak attack away from the heavy crossbow. Oh, right, because that's a two-handed weapon. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
That makes
sense. And then the other thing too is you have the double-bladed scimitar. Yeah, the double-bladed scimitar, right? That has the special property. But I'm just saying that has a special property. So obviously, and it's also two-handed.
Excluding it's okay. I would rather exclude the lance, this net, and this one niche double-bladed scimitar. I think excluding special property is the right way to go here.
Well, for now, let's look a little bit more bob and weave.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time on this one now.
VBunnie, did you have anything else you wanted to just last minute add for that? I'm sorry, I don't want to like totally close, shut you out with how much Pete and I are back and forth.
No, it's all great. Actually, I kind of expected this. The idea is that it does make you better at certain things, but you're not better at everything. And that's where the balance comes in. You're not going to be great at everything. Just like how the cleric is fantastic against undead, right? But not fantastic against, say, I don't know, nothing not undead.
So you want this to be a niche versus humanoids kind of.
Yes, exactly. More niche. This is if you're against the thing where you're able to do this, I want you to be able to do this take this fight and just stomp them. But when you're against the thing that you can't do this, you need to rely on more of your wit, more of your tactics, more of your rogue stuff.
All right. Well, I think
what's really interesting is this design is actually pretty similar to the player's handbook stuff, with the assassin and thief having more niche abilities. But all of the new rogues don't have that, and I think it's because that was a problem with the core.
It's an interesting
playability. But let's move on.
Yeah, sure. Bob and Weave was at 9th level. Your fighting skills can be the ability to counter melee opponents and dodge their blows. When a creature within 5 feet of you takes a melee attack against you, you can use your reaction to gain the benefits of the dodge action. Additionally, when you use this feature, you can attempt to grapple or shove the creature as a part of that same reaction if the creature misses on their attack against you. My first thought on this is that the rogue reaction is extremely important because the rogue reaction associates with uncanny dodge. And that is a feature that when you are hit with a damaging source, you can use your reaction to half that damage. And so in a lot of ways, this feature feels like it's at odds with the fact that rogues are going to be getting uncanny dodge and wanting to use that reaction for this, and then instead having this like kind of what is essentially a similar damage reducing feature. Rather than just having damage, it just increases the chance to miss. But probably, I mean, I guess I'm just saying this out of my ass, but probably evens out to a similar amount of damage reduction in the whole. First thoughts, Jeremy?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that's a perfect connection to make there. Uncanny dodge versus Bob and Weave. What does it do? Does this replace uncanny dodge in terms of, will I use this more often than I use uncanny dodge? And that's a very hard question to answer, which I would ever pick. Uncanny dodge is so reliable. This is a gambit. And so I think if you're going to do that, the gambit has to be worth it. I think we're kind of overdoing it with the grapple or shove at this point, since we've applied them both up in underhanded tactics. I don't think we need to have everything be and do grapple or shove. I don't know. I think Bob and Weave could be really cool, breaking some rogue convention here if this were a feature that was more like a number of times a day equal to, I don't know, your charisma modifier or your intelligence modifier, because maybe you're witty, you're intelligent, or maybe something, right? Some modifier, even dexterity if you really wanted to, or strength, or some modifier. You could give it the attack disadvantage, and then if it missed, right, make an attack roll or a shove attack as part of the reaction.
Wait,
I think that could be
idea. Well, again, Jeremy, I didn't quite process it without looking at it. Can you just tell me what you were thinking again there?
So the idea would be, right, rather than this be all the time, because I think having this on all the time blows it out of the water. I mean, it's way more powerful than any other rogue ability at this level. Just being able to always do it, always knock a creature prone, that's busted.
Oh, you mean, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
But I think it could, I don't know, I just think it could be very cool if this had a number of limited uses and was clearly better than uncanny dodge, because right now it's a gambit, and I don't know. I guess I'm just rambling at this point. I don't know. I think it's
maybe
just
this is a feature that rather than saying,
no, I like it. I like it. I like the riposte. I like the retort. I think that's neat.
No, I do too. But maybe this is a feature that, like, rather than trying to like be at odds with uncanny dodge, you just work with uncanny dodge and buff up the uncanny dodge in some way.
It's not at odds with the uncanny dodge. I think this pairs nicely with uncanny dodge. Uncanny dodge might be very useful in certain situations. Say something is at range, or you're fighting against a large creature who can't be grappled, or you're fighting against something with reach and you can't, and they're not within 5 feet of you, or
I hear you. We hear you.
This is not fair. So whenever you're going against that big boss creature who can probably hit you and knock you down with one hit, and having the damage is great, but you're still taking damage, versus I can potentially totally have this thing miss me, not die or not fall unconscious or whatever, and be able to grapple and turn this fight against it. Also,
I feel you there. My problem is a balance issue. I think being able to always do this is too strong for a 9th level rogue feature.
Do you think that this feature is, barring the grapple and
for a
shove,
9th level rogue feature? I think it's way too strong.
Okay, well, let's cut out grapple and shove for a second.
Yeah.
Do you think it's too good? Do you think that being able to suddenly impose disadvantage as a you think being able to impose disadvantage as a reaction is better than being able to half incoming damage?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking Jeremy.
Yeah, like both of us. You start. I'm interested in what you want to say, everybody.
I'm gonna say it's actually fairly comparable. You're giving them the potential to miss, but they can also still do very well. Actually, this might be a little bit not as strong as having the damage, to be honest, because they could still roll really well on both of their things. Whereas having the damage, it doesn't matter if they roll well or not, you're still having the damage.
I agree with you. And for that exact reason, I would almost never use this feature. If I had this feature, I wouldn't want to use this feature because I'd rather use my uncanny dodge.
Which is right. And unless you're in a situation, like I said, where you want to be able to grapple. And again, grappling doesn't, or shove them not down, which again doesn't work on every creature.
I hear you. I think that it's overdoing it with the grappling at this point. I think that I'm with you. I think this is actually, especially on the rogue, worse than uncanny dodge without the extra part on it.
Yeah.
With the extra part on it, I think this is very, very strong. Again, against targets you can grapple.
Yeah.
If you can't grapple the target, it's just I will never use this instead of uncanny dodge.
That's the idea. That's the point.
Yeah, but it needs to have a more use for that. Like with a bob and weave, I really take that as like your opportunistic, almost like boxer, right? You bob, you weave,
I almost
right?
want this to be a hit rather than like an attack, rather than, oh my god, and it works so well as an attack because then you get to sneak attack because you're a rogue.
You could just attack. Sure, go. I think that would be fair. I think that would be fair.
That interests me. That excites me a lot more than grappling or shoving again.
And that's what I was really getting around to here. Is I think this should have an attack attached to it if they miss on the reroll, as to really add to the gambit aspect of it. And I think it should have a limited number of uses per day.
This is funny. I just looked at
breaking convention for the rogue, but I think that would be, to me, a much more exciting feature.
That's starting to get there for me too. If that was the direction. Also, I actually don't know if I'm down on breaking that rogue convention though, Jeremy. I think that's something that people love about rogues.
Just the reliability, but you can't give them attack every time like that. That is game breaking.
That is the idea. That's why it wasn't
agreed. A change that I was going to throw at is, like when you take the dodge action on your turn, if the attack misses you, then you get to do the thing. Was a thing I was going to throw out, but
that might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, buffing up the dodge action or buffing up uncanny dodge to interact with it. But these are like theories.
Let's look at the rubric real quick. So we're losing the rubric.
Yeah.
On the balance, playability, and design aspect of it, I think it's an elegant design. Like it's pretty straightforward. I have no problems design-wise.
Yeah.
Playability, I think it would frustrate me currently.
I'm inclined to agree.
So hinged on, can you grapple that creature? Because shove prone won't do anything most of the time. They'll stand back up. It's their turn. So it's just really grapple is the only thing tied onto it. That just, I don't know. I think it's way too feast or famine if you have two core class features that are relying on it.
Also, I want to point out something that Blooddew said, because I think he got to where we ended up a lot quicker than we did, which was that I feel that Bob and Weave
the chat's always smarter than we are.
True. Always see the potential of the Subclass has to be the opportunistic brawler rogue. They should get a buff to their opportunity attack instead of another defensive option. I think we're like maybe not quite in the same range because I like Bob and Weave as an idea, and I think Bob and Weave carries a lot of flavor that feels right for me. But it's just a little.
It might be too close to sneak attack. I mean, not sneak attack, to uncanny dodge.
Yeah.
As a defensive move.
Let's look at ground game more though.
Yeah. So this is another one. Which one was this? When you move in a straight line toward a target, you can try and knock them prone as part of the same attack. See,
This is almost kind of taking the exact thing of I think it was the
from a tiger.
no, not there's a feat called Charger, yeah.
Oh, Charger.
Yeah. I think I like it.
Or grapple a target. If it hits, additionally, if a target attempts to grapple you and fails, I like the, in particularly, I think that the second half of this really strikes for me to start with. If someone tries to grapple you and they fail,
you turn it back on them.
You turn it back on them. That's such like a wrestling move that I've seen so many times. Like that really reflects that ideal.
I think that works well.
Yeah. The only question I would have to be is like the use caseage of it, like how often you'll get to see it. And like for me, this is an example of if I was a DM, I would just make it happen. I would just make people grapple more so that you would get to use this feature. And I kind of like that it has that, just like if you're putting a cleric in your game, you can put undead in. It's less true, I think, for you actively doing it, but for enemies doing it to you, it seems easier for the DM to threshold. So it doesn't hit that playability issue as much of it being famine-y to me.
I'm just trying to think where this fits in regards to other level 13 features that other rogues get.
Think a little weak.
I don't know. Definitely, that second part is super niche. I mean, once again, because now we have 3 features that are so reliant on grapple, I think unless at least one of those changes in a major way, this is going to be a really hard pill to swallow, this class, just because it's so reliant on being able to grapple. What might be a cool idea for this concept, VBunnie, which would be, I think, a really awesome way to tie this into this grapple right into a more broad use case. I know there are rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide for climbing on top of big creatures. Maybe if you could find a way to incorporate those rules in wherever you do grapple stuff here, you could do that.
Yeah.
That could be a really awesome way to turn this incredibly niche concept that I can tell you're very passionate about this concept. You really like the idea of, I really want this grappling rogue. And really take that and broaden it just a little bit so it's not quite as starved.
But you could also say, like, okay, for example, let's go with, I think there's this whole school called, what the heck is it called? Where illusions, School of Illusions, like Illusion Wizard and Trickery Cleric, right? Where if your DM is really good with illusions and knows how, it plays into illusions really well, then the Illusion Wizard or Trickery Cleric could be really great. Whereas if not, then it's not great. But you're gonna at least
I disagree. I gotta cut you off for a second because you're not right there. The wizard chassis is really good on its own. The wizards get very strong spells from Fireball. A lot of their power comes from other things. The rogue, that class basis isn't that strong.
Additionally, I think the illusion toolkit has the advantage of not being dependent on interaction with other things. It's just, you can always use your illusions no matter where you are, and you can find a use for those.
I just wanted to apologize. You're not necessarily wrong. I disagree with you. Maybe I
understand.
I just want to that's. I just really, I sorry about that. That was me misspeaking there.
No, and I agree. I've just been in games where the DM doesn't play into the illusions, and you make this cool illusion wizard, and then you're like, well, then why am I doing this? Why is this even happening? What am I doing? What's my use in the party if I can't do my cool illusion? Right?
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm against this. We don't want that to be possible. Right?
Exactly.
That's why I think it needs more than what it's got right now.
Mhm.
Indeed.
Right, and I agree. And I understand.
Let's look at ground and pound too, because I want to see the capstone here.
Oh, are we moving off of ground game already, think, Pete?
I feel like ground game just hits a lot of the areas that we've already been kind of discussing, and I actually kind of like you charge and almost
too.
tackle too. I like that idea. It's actually probably my favorite implementation of like the grappling thing so far here is ground game. So I actually like ground game, but it has the same grappling kind of issues as the whole as the whole picture kind of has, you know.
Well, Pete, go ahead and start off with ground and pound. What's your thoughts?
Master of hand-to-hand combat lets you excel at attacking the right moment. You gain expertise in athletics and acrobatics. If you already had them, you may gain another one. Additionally, you gain advantage on athletics and acrobatics check made to attempt to grapple a creature or for yourself from a grapple. I think we're going to run into the same problem here. For starters, you definitely already have proficiency in athletics or expertise in athletics. So kind of like putting it in felt a little like it feels to me less like you're getting athletics and acrobatics. Basically, it's just you gain 2 additional uses. You gain 2 additional expertise. Is kind of how this I feel like is going to play out in practice. And then gaining athletics and acrobatics, so you're like even better at the thing that you were probably already dunking. Like I don't. Yeah, I think you were already so good
already, and what's the rogues reliable talent? I mean, you can't roll less than like a 24 at that level anyway.
So I just think it's overkill. I think it's putting down. It's just hammering a nail in a grapple coffin that you already had in the ground.
I think personally, this feature is entirely unnecessary in its current execution. I think you could put something else here that could be very, very cool. I'd like actually to see some out of combat stuff, but it's kind of hard to do that at 17th level.
Yeah, this wouldn't be the place for that. But I wanted to say that as well. Basically, every rogue archetype has a more interaction, like actually usually a couple of features that really hit the interaction phase. But this one is all very combat oriented, which I know it's a Street Fighter, so it is like a more combat oriented subclass than most, but I think it should still hit that to some extent.
And you don't feel like expertise is not in any two skills? Yeah, isn't
11 levels too late to give them expertise in something that's meaningful.
I know that.
Like, yeah.
And like I was saying, it's going to amount to just 2 expertises of your choice, which doesn't, because they're probably already building this way because that's what you do for this class. You know, you want that flavor. And so then it doesn't end up leaning into anything about the Street Fighter. It's just a good extra skill proficiency that doesn't embody the flavor of the class that you're going for.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we're saying at this level,
it's
adding expertise is it's too late to give them expertise in that. Mm-hmm. You already going to have that because you're a rogue and you get expertise at 6th level. And let's be real, you're gonna pick athletics and acrobatics on this rogue because those are your bread and butter skills. So it's like, by 17th level, I think you need a different feature here. I don't know what that feature necessarily is, but I think you can get it.
Like doing something involving like what you were talking about with bob and weave and like reaction attacks every turn. That's the kind of thing that could be maybe on a 17th level feature.
I can move this and bob and weave and replace them and
honestly
do attacks as well and just move them.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to put that bob and weave feature in at 17th level, right, I would say you wouldn't even have to put a limiter on it. You can just say, whenever you successfully dodge an attack with this, you get a free cheap shot, right?
Yeah,
that's an option you could do, and that's very reasonable for 17th level ability.
Which is just moving it and then changing a couple things, and just making an attack roll and stuff, and then on top of the knock prone and grapple, and it would be no problem at 17.
Yeah, and it would be nice to have the. Mm-hmm. It would be nice to have the attack so that it is reliable against everything. You know,
I don't know what you'd put at 9th level though.
You just replace it. You move this with the expertise. And
the question is, would you want to put expertise at that level, or maybe there's something else that? I'm not sure. Maybe. I mean, I think expertise at 9th level is okay. What do you think? What do you think, Pete? Is that too late?
I don't know if
It's only 3 levels after the regular rogue.
What's going on? I don't know. Is my answer.
You know what I would probably call this
it's just
at 9th level. Oh,
I was gonna say it's just the expertise just doesn't it doesn't do anything new for me. It's good, and I would be like, yeah, a couple more expertises, but it doesn't just it just doesn't communicate anything about what makes this archetype cool to me.
I see what you're saying. I tend to agree. What other stuff does a kind of Street Fighter really do, right? Can we tie into... Oh, okay.
I've been holding that back for the entire time. I haven't made a single Street Fighter joke, and we came in, I didn't do but VBunnie, I wanted you to know the whole time all I could think about was the arcade game Street Fighter.
I know, that's good. I want you to do that.
Farkas got a lot of comments in chat I want to just quickly hit on. Saying the rogue chassis gets skills and scaling sneak attack. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the rogue chassis gets skills, and those are really great. But in terms of its combat prowess, I think a lot of that really comes from the subclasses for the most part.
Mm-hmm. They do. It does, and this has a lot of combat.
Oh yeah, no, I think in that regard it works, but it just needs to. Like I said, I think it needs a way to interact with larger creature, or with creatures that you can't grapple, and maybe that climbing atop a bigger creature is a way to do it. Plus, that just seems so cool to me. I would be way more into this class if I could also climb up on the Tarask's back, right?
Mm-hmm. So you're saying
that were one of my core things.
You're saying it right now it's a little bit underpowered against other certain creature types, and it's a little bit overpowered against other creature types.
I think that's a reasonable way of putting it.
Maybe
it's maybe a bit of a simplification, but I think you're on the right track about where we're both coming from on this one.
That is kind of how I designed it. And that is kind of the idea of what it is that it gives you this really great thing that in the right circumstances is fantastic, just similar to an assassin or any of these other rogues. But in other situations, it's not fantastic. And that's the space that I was going for. And I understand a playability that would be, that's the thing, but it's also what's already existed, so it kind of fits right under the same already established rules for that type of thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there might be just a difference in design philosophy there, where
I guess what Pete and I are trying to get around to is we don't think that that's necessarily designed to emulate is the feast or famine design of the assassin in particular. It has some problems.
Yeah, the assassin can be problematic in that particular regard.
I mean, it's certainly
and this is even
mark.
And this is even more feast or famine, I would say, than the assassin, because sneaking into initiative is more consistent. You can sneak against just about every character, but you definitely cannot grapple against every creature.
Can you sneak against every creature when you have a party with a fighter with heavy metal and armor plating and stuff, walking around?
You can always scout ahead. That's a thing you can do.
But the scouting ahead and communication with your party, that feature has issues because it's predicated on your ability to communicate and coordinate with your party, and for your party to be comfortable with you getting to sometimes have fun when they can't. The assassin has a whole other. The point is this is, I think, even more in that direction than the assassin.
It's predicated on people knowing and strictly interpreting or loosely interpreting the rules of surprise, and I think Pete, we both learned that in
I mean we've
Black Hand.
We've talked about that feature.
It's a very nuanced rule set, and I think
between a poor one.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's not a nuanced rule set is really the key. But between the potential issues of not giving enough backbone to the improvised weapons and the potential issues with not being able to grapple creatures because of their size or whatever. Yeah,
So you want to hit the rubric and big picture this?
Yeah, and I think that's what I was getting around to there. I don't think I can give this guy the point on playability. For those reasons, I think it needs at least one of those, but preferably both of those things addressed. It needs a little bit more backbone to the improvised weapons, and I think it needs a way to interact with big creatures.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you there. Playability is going to be one for me as well, where I would want to go. So let's just one at a time. At space, I think we both agreed that space is there. Yeah. Balance. This is one that I'm on the fence on, but I'm actually leaning towards it being okay. There's the issue of the melee dodge shove. That's a little bit funky, but on the whole, I don't think it would be like, if you put this in a game, I don't think you'd see this rogue outstripping other rogues. It's a little bit weak, but not so weak, and it's strong enough in its niche that when it's, I don't know, I think that it actually is pretty balanced.
It's really hard to say, because against other humanoids, it's busted. Against bigger creatures, it's terrible.
And it's tough to say, like,
and
but
so
that
like
plays
overall,
more into playability and honestly design for me than it does in balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very hard to evaluate on balance. I would honestly even strip the balance point and just make it out of 4 at this point, because I don't think we can talk about.
You don't think you can separate the balance and the design?
I would look at Undying Warlock. Undying Warlock has a thing where they're really good against undead and stuff, but they're not.
Well, I mean, and being good against a specific thing is okay if you've got something else to back you up. Like, Warlocks always have Eldritch Blast, very reliable ability to fall back on. Just like the Wizard has Fireball, you know.
And you always have Sneak Attack.
You don't always have Sneak Attack. And Sneak Attack really isn't that strong of an ability. That's the problem. You sometimes have Sneak Attack.
All right, so...
And that's my take, at least.
Yeah. So playability, I think we agree that there are playability issues here, and that is in this extreme disparity between the extreme feast or famine nature of it. Let's talk design. Is it elegant? I actually think a lot of the phrasings on a lot of these rules are elegant. I think that they're well written. I think it's very clear that they make sense and that they, you know, how they function. Yep.
And I would respect that, appreciate it very, very much. A lot of people don't take the time to make their homebrew really clear, and so people get lost just trying to understand what they were even going for.
Yeah, I mean, I had an issue with that. I had an issue with that in the thing that I put here recently, which I don't know, it was a time issue, but like, it was just, you know, sometimes ideas are difficult to respect accurately in the mechanics of 5e. And I think you did that well. That being said, I'm also a little on the fence on the consistent reliance on the grapple feature and how it's like, but again, it plays back into like all of these issues that we're having tie into basically one issue that we have with the design here. And that is that it is too heavily invested in the grapple. Yeah.
It's just a bit too niche.
So it's tough to like balance playability and design are all affected by that same issue.
You get like a 2, maybe a 3 out of 5. Pretty good for a first pass on a class, to be frank.
Yeah,
but it's hard to, really hard. It's especially hard to evaluate balance in context of the other features. I guess actually, if we had to look at it as written, I would give it the fail on balance because it's not good enough. Because a lot of monsters are too big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it fits into the other designs that are similar that rogues have. So,
I mean, you're talking about like the assassin
Yeah, like, is it
Or-
balanced against other rogues? And then the answer is yes, because some of them have the same issues, like Assassin.
I don't think it is.
I don't agree. Yeah, I don't think Assassin has this issue to this extent.
Assassin's got some problems, but the problems with Assassin is how people play the Assassin. The problems with this class are what the Dungeon Master puts you up against, you know, and I think that's the core problem. You can do something about the frustration with not being able to get your Assassinate feature off. You can't do something about running into large creatures. That's not something that you have any option to deal with.
Right. But the DM, you would obviously want to talk to the DM about this and make sure that there would be creatures that
Looks
you
like we're dropping some frames. All of a sudden.
Uh-oh. Obviously,
Ain't that
you would
whack?
want to talk to.
All right, we're good now. Sorry.
Yeah, obviously, you would want to talk to your DM before you run something like this, and make sure that there would be options for you.
Yeah, and that would be
Just like-
necessitated by the nature of the class, and you definitely that's like a thing like you hopefully want to design something that would just fit into any game ever, which is a lofty ideal, but this one would be very much like you would have to talk to your DM and be very clear about like what you want out of their game, and
I think it all boils down to that playability of I would get so frustrated trying to play this if there's nothing to grapple. Even if it were just a couple of combats, like you're going underwater, right? You got to play your underwater party venture. Oh my God, kill me! Like
Jeremy, hug a shark, grab a shark.
Well, actually, if you grapple a shark, its speed becomes 0, and sharks suffocate when they can't move. So, really, this is just incredibly good against sharks.
Okay.
Yes, it is. You're gonna win the shark battle, and then you can ride a shark, maybe. You know.
But Pete, I think as a wrap, thank you so much for submitting it.
Yeah.
No, thank you. This is exactly what I was looking for. So.
Well, I'm glad. This is exactly what
Lich's
Lair is. It's rigorous and just rigorous critique.
The thing is, I think it's the most important about this, right? Is I came into here with my Mystique Bard, and I was like, haha, it is perfect. And then I got 2 other like honest, perspectives on it. I just looked at it like, yeah, you know what? That's fair. Maybe I should change these. I still disagree with it losing the Bard flavor, but sometimes you can agree to disagree. But for the most part, I think a lot of the ideas that I got on that were really, really good, and I think there are a lot of really cool things that this can go in some really awesome directions. I would really be interested in seeing how you adjust this subclass, right, and what you do with it to really continue, right, to flush it out and
to refine,
finish it up.
I also kind of
see more of it in the workshop.
Yeah, I also kind of knew what the issues of this is. I kind of already knew where they were. I already kind of knew it. And I just wanted to see how it would fare against your critique. And I also wanted to be obviously an example of, somebody the first time, like coming out and being taken down. And
huge shout out to you, man, for being the first one to brave the Lich's Lair. I made it very clear, I think, last time, like, hey, the Lich's Lair is not for the faint of heart, and it's tough to be confronted with true honesty on something that you put a lot of time and work on, and I really respect you for having the gumption to get up here and let us have at it.
And I really like the concept.
Agreed.
I have played a Street Fighter Rogue. I would do it absolutely if there were a subclass that supported that concept better than I hacked it together.
And that's the idea. I want something to fill in a different space. And obviously I see what I would change. I would take the ground and pound, move it to 9th level, take the 9th level feature, move it to 17th, and make it more open to things, and then change the 13th level to make it more open to things. And that I think would solve all the issues.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what work continues to be done on it. And if you keep certainly, if you keep working on it, make sure you let me and Jeremy know that progress proceeds. And
I'd love to see the final copy. I'm very
obviously, yeah. I mean, I would love for you guys to see it as well. I kind of want to put this out there because this is a concept that I've had for a while, and I wanted people to see it, and that's what you guys did. Thank you.
Well,
No, thank you.
Thank you again, VBunnie.
And of course, this is the kind of stuff I see Max Meister in the chat. I have ideas that I want to put in Fantasy Labs for later stream now. This was so inspiring. Exactly, right? Like, it's not that scary. Pete and I are scary, but we're not that scary. I'm kind of scary.
We're scary. When the smiles.
I mean, you do have spooky spooky chat icons, so
We do.
obviously
There's
you're
Spooky Pete.
Spooky. But
There he is.
anyway, thank you so much, VBunnie.
Yeah.
We appreciate
Thank you.
you sharing
And
your stuff here. And
As the Lich claims another soul. Jeremy,
yum souls.
Jeremy, could you
Fine.
laugh again? This has been Lich's Lair. Dun-dun. Thanks again, VBunnie. We're going to move you
Thank
down
you.
for now.